we started a remote recording business, and it's been pretty exciting because when the world was closed, we stole a lot of work from Los Angeles, which is pretty exciting. And right here in Bristol over the last couple of years, we currently did a record that's #1 right now, which is very exciting, and also working with John Legend right now, and we've gosh, there's so many different people, Judy Collins, BB Rexa, Frank Ocean, many people we've worked with right here. It's been very exciting. And my own record that I made down the street got 2 Grammy nominations last year, which was a little record about local stories. It was pretty cool, yeah. So that was very exciting. And you know, one of the things about accomplishment that's really powerful is like, I've been to the Grammys a bunch with different projects, and it's just this whole kind of ridiculous thing in a huge, arena in Los Angeles, and everybody's wearing outfits made out of whatever. Like Lady Gaga one year wore an outfit made out of meat, and you're just sort of sitting there going like, what in the world am I doing there? And 2 things happened that day that were pretty cool. One was like seeing our little record, Ourself Behind Herself Concealed, coming up on the screen twice. And the other was Bonnie Raitt coming up to me to tell me how much she loved our little dumb record. And that was kind of like, I was like, I'm nobody, but thank you, it's amazing. And one of the things that I think is so interesting is just the role of courage and doubt and how they play out in our lives. And so that's a lot of what we're going to talk about a little bit today. And I'm going to turn it over to Len Cook for a second, and he's going to talk a little bit about courage.
So first off, thank you all for coming. I hope you're enjoying it so far. We're both happy-go-lucky people, so you're going to see a lot of craziness over the next couple minutes. So bear with us. If we start getting a little wild, you guys can just join along. Does that sound good?
Whoa.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So I want to propose a question. What is courage? Now, there's a lot of different ways you could explain what courage is, but I would like to say courage is the ability to rise to the occasion regardless of the potential risk involved. So that brings on another question. Where does courage come from? Is someone courageous a person with no fear? Like they can go into whatever they want to with no regard as the repercussion? Or is it someone who's aware of their fear, doubt, insecurities, but has the ability to push through anyway? I would like to say that it's actually both. So what I want to do is I want to propose a little exercise for you guys. You can participate or not. It's up to you, those of you in the audience and at home. I want you to close your eyes. We're going to visualize ourselves in a place now. Like when I say that and everyone just eyes beaming right on me. So close your eyes. Come on. Follow along. I want you to imagine yourself in a dark room. You're all by yourself. So breathe, relax, really put yourself in this place. Now all of a sudden you're surrounded by about 1,000 people. It's you and just all of these people around you. How does that make you feel? Are you a little claustrophobic? Are you fine? Now let's take you out of that group of people, put you up on a stage. Now your job is to give a presentation in front of all of these people, eyes on you. Now let's take and put a microphone in your hand, and you're going to sing a song or you're going to play an instrument, perform for the audience. Now let's take the stage away and put you in a ring. You're in front of a person whose sole purpose is to put you down before time is up with an audience watching. Now let's take you away from those really extreme situations and put you back in a little bit more reality for most people. What if you had an idea and that idea leans into your passion? So you decide to take everything you have, all the things you've worked for, put them aside, every penny you have, and invest in this idea and start your career as an entrepreneur. You go out and open your own business with no second plan. This just has to pan out. There's no backup. Now this one, some of you guys may have related to a little bit more. What if you're walking out of the hospital for the first time with your firstborn baby and you're moving into the world? Now it's your job to raise this child. All of those situations, you may open your eyes now, the experiment's over. What I want you to think about is how those scenarios made you feel. Now many of you may have already done something like this. I have done every single one of those. I'm now at this moment giving a lecture. We have done this a ton of times before. I've been in the ring. I have raised a child. I have a little girl. She's 4 years old. And I've started my own business. I'm the head coach and owner of Champion Striking and Fitness. I'm a professional MMA fighter and professional kickboxer. I teach people. I train students how to apply martial arts to not only competition, but also their own lives. So I've had a lot of experience dealing with these scenarios. And one of the things that I've learned is that courage is built off of a few different things. One, confidence, overall confidence in yourself and your ability. The other, sometimes courage will come from a purpose, a drive, something that gives you a reason to push through. And then the last situation that I see is that you have no choice but to push through. That's where your courage comes from. The risk of failure is too great. You have no option but to try, at least try. So with that, I have learned that the development of courage is a skill. You can develop your mind in a way to where you can overrun and override these natural human emotions that cause fear, anxiety, doubt. And some people are naturally born with this ability. They can just go into a situation and they don't care. Some people are a little bit more aware. And there are some people that absolutely are frozen by scary situations. They have no way to push through. And what's really interesting is you can take each one of these individuals and throw a different scenario and their roles may switch. So this is why I say it's a skill, not something that you're born with, because there's always something that's going to set you back. So we're going to take a little bit of time and talk about this, because I truly believe that if you learn how to overrun the things in your mind that hold you back, it'll offer an opportunity for you to find that courage within yourself and present opportunities that would have never opened themselves up to you before. And Dave actually has a really interesting story about an opportunity such as this.
I do? No, I'm just kidding. Very nice.
If you don't, you better make one up.
I better make one up right now. No, I do have a good story. So yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really interesting about like success and failure is that failure is something you can always control. You can always fail. You know, it's very easy to have an unsuccessful career in music. Success is really hard because it's like improvisation. You don't really have full command on how it's going to happen or how it's going to go down. And I think the story he wants me to tell is an interesting story. It's sort of from early in my career. I was in graduate school at the Juilliard School in New York, which is a music school, and I was just starting to figure out how the cello could be used outside classical music. And it was like a really lonely place because other than Yo-Yo Ma, who's like the North Star for every cellist in the world, like including me, some kind of like superpower wizard, there really wasn't anybody doing it. And the way that we were taught in school, we were kind of taught that unless you got an orchestra job, there was kind of no hope for you. It's like you either get an orchestra job or you give up music. And I knew I didn't want an orchestra job. And also just the ability to audition and actually win one was so difficult that, like, you know, it just seemed like a crazy like uphill battle. So I started sort of like facing my fears and mustering up some courage and just going to like lots and lots of open mic nights in New York. And I would wait for hours and hours to play. It was like always so humiliating. You'd sign up on these lists and you'd sit there for like 4.5 hours. Some musicians here have had this experience. And then at the end, they'd be like, let's bring up the cellist. He's going to play I Am the Walrus by the Beatles. I was like, I don't even know I'm the Walrus. It's not my generation. I don't listen to that stuff. Like, what are you talking about? You know, I want to play blues. I want to play rock. I want to play, you know, grunge and hip hop. But somehow I weathered that, and I had the courage to begin to just put what I was doing out there and not need to control the outcome. And I met a very cool violinist, Lorenza Ponce, and she connected me with this. She just sort of took a chance on me and put me in this bizarre double string quartet gig with John Bon Jovi. And we recorded Living on a Prayer. Somewhere it's online, and so it's like it's double string quartet and John. And we ended up recording it at his house in New Jersey, which was pretty cool. He has a really cool place. And there was an engineer there, and the engineer's name was Ross, and I kind of made friends with the engineer because I kind of had learned along the way that it's really important to just be nice to everybody because you never really know the person who's going to like make the connection for you. So a couple weeks later, Ross calls me on the phone, and Ross is like, I got this gig for you, but I can't actually tell you anything about it. And I was like, well, what is the gig? He's like, it's on July 4th. So I had this girlfriend at the time, and she really liked to do these really terrible Long Island getaways. I lived in New York City. It was awful. But so she had this plan, and so I was like, I kind of have plans with my girlfriend. Can you tell me more about the session? And he's like, well, I can't tell you who the artist is, and I can't tell you if it pays. It's all about how you do at it. It could be like 1 day or 2 weeks. That's all I'm going to tell you. So I almost said no, and then I said yes, which probably ruined my relationship, which is all right, because, you know, whatever, probably didn't mean to happen anyway. And I decided to do the session, and I showed up at a studio on the Lower East Side of Manhattan called The Magic Shop, and I knocked on the door, and a gentleman opened the door, and he's like, hello, my name is Chris. Chris looked very, very familiar. And I decided in my brain that Chris was a drummer in a Williamsburg hipster band. Williamsburg is like the snooty area of Brooklyn. It's too pricey. I was like, oh, he must be in like a shoegazer hipster band. He looks cool. He looks cooler than me, so I must be in. And I had this image in my mind. So Ross Engineer hadn't really showed up. So we sat around and we played Call of Duty or something for like an hour. We played video games, me and Chris. And finally Chris was like, you know, why don't I play a song for you? And we can see if you like my band. And I was like, great, that sounds awesome. So he played a song, and I listened to the whole song, and what was going through my head was, I can't believe that I just totally messed up my relationship to play with a band that sounds exactly like Coldplay. And so I said, well, Chris, like, what do you do in the band? And are you the drummer? And he goes, no, I'm the singer and songwriter. And I was like, well, what's the name of your band? And he was like, Coldplay. It's like... So I was immediately pretty terrified. I was like, oh boy, what's about to happen here? Like, I don't know. The engineer showed up and there was no sheet music or even an idea, which, because I was a Juilliard student at the time, I didn't have the improvisational skills I do now, so that was a little scary. But somehow I mustered up the courage to just be part of the process, to just be there. And to not wear the t-shirt that says, like, I can't do this, I'm not the person to be picked, but actually wear the t-shirt of saying, all right, let's go. So 180 string tracks later, we made a song called Vida La Vida, which you guys probably know. It goes something like this. Originally, Vida La Vida was a 7-minute orchestral piece. It wasn't even going to be a song. And then it became this huge song. And then my career changed, because then everybody was calling me. They're like, oh, you're the guy that did this. Can we get you to do that? And again, I was overcome with a wave of fear. I was like, do I really have what it takes? I've been doing karate since I was 12 years old. I did karate because I used to get beat up a lot. I was a poor kid who went to a rich school. And there was this bodyguard guy who took care of some of the rich kids, and he taught karate for free after school. So I was like, I want to be like him. He seems cool. I want to beat up the other kids. Beating me up. That sounds good. I know some of my friends here at the gym understand that mentality. And so the interesting thing is that in a lot of ways, music is very micro-athletic. And throughout my career, I've really used a lot of the secrets that I've learned from martial arts to enhance a lot of my technical performance as a musician. And I'm going to kind of hand it back to Len now to talk a little bit about his career and his experiences and some of the ways that he uses those in his macro athletic career.
You guys like how he's going to hand me the mic after he talks about meeting a celebrity from Coldplay, and then I've got to upstage that? Like, seriously?
We could just spar.
No, so like we said before, I've spent a lot of time as a competitor. So I spent 15 plus years in the world of combat sports. And for those of you that don't know what it is, the sport of MMA, kickboxing, boxing, anything that involves full contact fighting for other people's entertainment, combat sports. So I loved competing. I went professional in 2011. I competed for a long time, but I decided early on that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I changed my life up. I quit my job, and I took a part-time job working so I could train full-time. And I originally wanted to be a personal trainer, just working with general fitness and clients and athletes that are interested in bettering themselves, and started taking on kickboxing lessons with people. This was a way for me to subsidize my life so I could train full-time. So if you don't know, when you first start fighting, it's not a very lucrative career. You do it out of passion. And this was how I could support myself and pursue my dream. So I started taking more clients and started getting into teaching a little bit more, and then worked with more group classes. And as I started taking a little bit of time off from competing, I really fell in love with teaching. So I started the idea of opening a gym. And in 2016, my wife and I, we opened Champion Striking and Fitness, which we're located on Euclid Avenue. So we're right here in Bristol. We originally started out on State Street, so we've been here the whole time, and it's been awesome to be part of the community and see it grow to what it is now. But that time that I had working with individual students and then running a lot of group classes and then opening my business gave me a lot of insight into how people react in certain situations. Now, to give you a little context, whenever you're fighting, there's situations that'll arise that make you think on your feet, and they're very stressful. And within that moment, if you can't override those emotions, you'll lose. So training has to be the same way. Now, a lot of people get into martial arts for health and fitness and wellness, not only physical health, but mental health. So it's a good way to keep yourself healthy all around, and it's a lot of fun. So most of the people that I train are interested in that. We also have a lot of people that are interested in competing or training like competitors. What was really interesting is even though the people that are put into situations that are very stressful from a competition standpoint, we'll see more moments where they show natural tendencies of doubt, insecurity, they have a little bit of trouble committing. Sometimes they'll overcompensate, so come up with reasons as to why something's not working and kind of make excuses, or they'll be too prideful and overrun themselves a little bit harder than they should, which opens them up to failure. Those same tendencies wind up showing themselves outside the gym. That's what's really interesting. So someone who has a lot of doubt issues in the gym, in the practice room, and this isn't just the people that are looking to compete and doing live training. We have people that are interested in that and then people that aren't. So some people never step foot in the room where they're actually getting punches thrown at them. But they have these moments of doubt and inability to do what they want within the moment. And out in the gym or out in the real world, when they start figuring out the things in the gym, those problems start going away. So when that doubt starts drifting away or that pride starts calming down a little bit or the insecurity drifts off, the things in their real life start fixing themselves as well, which is one of the things that leads us to this whole little get-together we're having right now. Where does Composing a Champion come from? So these concepts and principles that we talk about have become kind of a core of my curriculum. Now, just to be clear, when I teach, I don't have a therapy session every time. We train, we work out, we have a good time, but it depends on the person. But these things kind of organically have become part of my teaching. And when Dave come to Bristol back in 2020, he was a karate practitioner and moved here to, start his life during the pandemic. And we started training together a little bit, and it presented a lot of situations that he wasn't used to, just like every other student that I've trained. So these same problems, having to overrun the mental wheelhouse that goes on whenever you're in a tough situation and being able to shut your emotions down, we started talking through the solutions for those. And then we started talking about our professional careers and how the preparation process, like preparing for a match or preparing for an audition or a show or the roadblocks that you run into, they all started correlating. And we really looked at the physicality side of it, so rhythm and movement, which at the very beginning of this lecture today, we played a little bit, like me doing some ninja stuff and him playing on the cello. It's actually a drill that we do within our program. So it's a rhythm memory drill. He does something and I try to repeat the memory or the rhythm off of memory with movement, and then we switch roles. I move and he plays on an instrument. So taking all of that and putting it together in a program, we started talking about all of the things that students in performing arts and professional development, so as business or anything else, all of the things that kind of correlate together that make this program what it is. And Dave can tell you a little bit more about those people in his world.
I mean, it's kind of interesting, like as you were talking a little bit about the idea of like what you learn as a martial artist and how it goes out into the world. I mean, one thing I learned from you that I think is really powerful is karate's a very like evasive fighting form. And early on in learning fighting from you, you're a very aggressive fighter. I sort of became very aware of how that evasive principle was also something I was doing as a player and also in the music business. That I would I do a lot of corporate music, like pop music and advertising music, and I would always be the person in the meeting who would kind of back off and, make everybody else happy. And there's a concept in fighting called ring control that's about how much of the ring is behind you. And I started in music business meetings, which in 2021 and 22 were mostly on Zoom, imagining how do I get more ring behind me in this meeting, which I think applies to kind of everyone. I was like, I realized that I'm the kind of person, I was like, I'll just let them get me up against the wall and then I'll just like do whatever my person in charge tells me to do. And I was like, no, I'm not that interested in that anymore. How do I kind of keep this high-level music gig in the film industry? Or I'm thinking about a campaign that Blake Collins and I did for Coca-Cola here in Bristol that was a really big one, and it was a lot of Zoom meetings, and it was a big dance around we were creating the sound of Coca-Cola for the state of Georgia, and there was a lot of things around rural Georgia and urban Georgia, and I kept thinking about that ring control piece. I was like, you know, do they have me up against the wall in this meeting? Do I have agency? Can I push forward? How do I push forward? And it's been really interesting, both I play a lot of chamber music, but as an engaged chamber music player, to think about sort of how to engage and disengage. And so, in a way, fighting is a very physical metaphor for something that I think we can very powerfully use in our lives in other ways. And what's very cool about our program is we've actually taken it to schools kind of all over the U.S., and we've done residencies in, gosh, like over 20 colleges, and some very involved residencies with performing arts high schools, where we've kind of put, Len has a very sort of systematic approach to sort of fight training and sort of how to build a fight camp. And I was very intrigued because I sort of grew up as a competitive classical player, and I didn't have coaches like that. I had Russian coaches that yelled at me. But then one of my biggest sort of psychological issues was that, you know, I started playing places like Carnegie Hall when I was about 11 years old. No one had my back. I didn't have trainers that, you know, it was basically like, get it right or we don't love you anymore. It was kind of like that. There was no sort of systematic way. And so it led, in my case, to an approach to preparation that was mostly focused on cramming at the last minute and pulling all-nighters and not really being able to overcome glass ceilings in a systematic way. After I trained with Len for a while, I have a lot of graduate students that are auditioning for orchestras and stuff. So I started applying a lot of sort of the fight camp principles to these students, and it was really changing a lot in their lives. And then this year, for the first time, I actually got to apply it to my own career in a powerful way. I was a soloist at Carnegie Hall for 2 sold-out shows in January. And if you guys know, Carnegie Hall is pretty much like the top of the classical pillar of stuff, you know, and it was a weird show. It was a video game show, Genshin Impact, which is a very cool video game that came out in 2020. I was the solo pianist. It was a huge, very difficult piano part. It's a 3-hour show. We had 2 3-hour shows in the same day in Carnegie Hall. We'd already done the show in Los Angeles. We'd done it in a bunch of other cities, Boston, Chicago. What I wasn't ready for was this. I walked on the stage of Carnegie Hall, and every bit of my imposter syndrome hit me like a ton of bricks. Suddenly, I was the 8-year-old trailer trash kid from the poor family. It's my actual history. Lived in a house that sometimes didn't have electricity, that, you know, shoplifted clothes so I could go to school and look like the other kids, played a plywood cello in competition. And I sat there and I looked at that huge hall and I went, I don't have the right to be here. Like, I don't belong here. I can't do this. And I watched everything in my psychology go. I even had like part of me that was like, I could find someone else to do this today. I'd be like, I could find a sub. Like that would even happen. And it was interesting. And I kind of did a little timeout with myself because it didn't feel great. I was like, all right, this doesn't feel good, and I need to do this performance. And it's a very difficult performance, and a lot of it is counting on me to bring it. And I started thinking a lot about the fight training I've been doing, and I was thinking, what are these assumptions I'm making about myself that are unrealistic, and how do I override these, and how do I channel myself as a fighter right now? And it was really powerful, and like what was really moving to me about the experience is that I actually delivered 2 like almost technically perfect performances that day. And I mean, it was kind of a personal victory for me because it changed a t-shirt that said, I'm never the kid who's gonna be on that Carnegie Hall stage, to a t-shirt that said I was the kid that rocked it on that Carnegie Hall stage. So it makes me think a lot about how we create these strategies to smash through these glass ceilings of assumptions we make about ourselves. And I think that, you know, martial arts for me has been a very powerful way. I think there's a lot of psychology around it too, to kind of look at the ways that those things can happen. And I'm going to hand it back to you to talk about.
So at this point, we've heard a lot of interesting information when it comes to courage and building courage. We haven't really gotten to strategy yet. We've talked about some concepts, how you can find it. Now we're going to get into some nuts and bolts of how to actually build this within yourself. So if you're a person who struggles with pushing through moments of uncertainty or insecurity, some of these things will hopefully help you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pop the hood so you guys can see what things are like in kind of in the backside of someone's mind who steps into a very stressful scenario. So I'm a fighter. I've done this for many years. I've been in the ring and in countless wars in the gym, moments where I've had to think through things and then come out with a positive outcome. And what's really hard about that is when you're in one of these scenarios, you never are allowed to be like, I am scared to death of losing, making that walk down the ring. The example that I give, and it's really interesting now because the concepts of mental health have been up and they're open a lot more nowadays. If you know who Mike Tyson is, he is one of the scariest men to ever step in a boxing ring. If you don't know who he is one of the scariest men to ever step in a boxing ring. I really like hearing him talk about making the walk to the ring. He said he was scared to death. So this is actually a normal feeling for a lot of people that wind up in high-pressure scenarios, both professionally and personally. These mental battles going on in your mind. And what I want to do is take you through my last fight, which ironically happened while we were preparing our program, Composing a Champion. So in doing that, so when I competed before, I was the type who just pushed through. Didn't matter how I felt, I pushed everything to the side and just battled on, and it worked well. I won a lot of titles. I climbed the ladder here. I was the #1 ranked fighter in the Southeast U.S. on one of the largest sanctioning bodies in the world. So I had a lot of success as a competitor, but the problem is pushing everything to the side is just a Band-Aid for the problem. You'll constantly wind up dealing with these bouts of anxiety and fear and doubt and imposter syndrome. So while we've been developing this program, it helped me formulate the things that I do into a structured curriculum, and in doing so, I was hyper aware of everything that happened within this last match. So what happened was, at this point in my career, I'd taken about a 3-year layoff. I hadn't stepped in the ring in a pretty good while. And I got the itch to fight again, so this was in 2021, and I decided to reach out to a promoter and take a match. So he calls me, he sets the fight up, and immediately my brain starts going, okay, this is real. Now I've got to get my camp together and do all this. And the first place my head went was, I can't mess this up. At this point, we're in 2021. We opened our gym in 2016. I had a big following locally. We're going to be fighting in Kingsport. So this is going to be right in my backyard. People knew who I was. They're going to come back and they're going to watch me fight because I haven't been in the ring in a while. We've got a large client base now in our business, so all of my students who look to me to teach them the fight are going to come watch me. I can't lose. If I lose, it's going to look bad because then even the potential customers that are at the fight, they might be like, I don't know about this guy. All of these are scenarios that went on in my mind that are so far from the truth, it's absolutely ridiculous saying it out loud. It seems logical, but the reality is we're all the heroes of our own show. What you think isn't necessarily what's going to happen. So you can actually put yourself in a worse situation than you really are in just because of the way you're thinking. Reality, what would happen? And for those of you that don't know how fighting works, you have set amount of rounds. In kickboxing, it's 3 rounds. If you get a finish or a ref stoppage, the fight's over. If you don't, it goes to a decision. And at the end of the match, they decide off of a certain set of criteria who the winner is. If I'd have gone the distance and lost, no one would have cared. If I got finished right at the beginning, no one would have cared. My students would have been right back in the gym on Monday. The people that come out to watch the fights that knew who I was, I'm like, that sucks. I like him. I hate that he lost, but it is what it is. They're there to watch good fights. As long as I went out and I tried hard, the potential clients wouldn't have cared either. They'd been like, that dude didn't give up, or that dude just got caught. All of these things that I put in my mind were my own fears and my own concerns. So being aware when those pop up in your brain when you're put in a moment of stress will help you calm them down. So just self-awareness and brutal honesty with what's going on. Don't overcompensate. Don't make excuses. Just tell yourself the truth and work through the problem. So we move to the next step of the fight, which is preparation. Typically, you have a fight camp. You want to be in shape. Most people who are professionals and do their job correctly as competitors are already ready to compete before they ever take a match. My competitors are required to be ready to compete. They don't have an option. They have to be here and ready and train. I'm pointing at a couple of them. I've got some in here. So but once you accept the fight, it's time to break down the strategy for that specific opponent. So you're preparing for an event. So we take this outside of fighting. You could put this into anything, just like he said, preparing for a concert or a presentation or a job interview. This is where the fight camp concept comes in. I looked at about a 45-second clip of my opponent's, the only thing that I could find on the guy, and I wound up seeing that his style was going to give me some trouble for the things that I like to do. So I come up with this plan that was against the way that I normally competed and tried to put it in action. And while I was training, I started having a lot of trouble pulling things off. So I started getting in my head like, okay, this guy is actively competing. He hasn't taken time off. I've been out of the ring for a while, so I've got to come back in against a guy who knows what's going on and pull something off that I'm having trouble pulling off against my students, some of which haven't even competed before. What was happening in my mind was going into this rabbit hole of looking at the problem that's in front of me and thinking about all the issues instead of the solution. So when I stopped and thought, all right, I am technically superior to everyone that I train with, but everyone that I train with trains with me on a regular basis. So when you train with someone in the world of combat sports long enough, you start picking up each other's tendencies. You know what each other like to do. So it allows you to shut down your A game a little bit. That was what was going on. So one day I just decided to focus on manipulating my game, play, and have fun. And this was 2 weeks out from the match, and everything felt better. All of the other problems that I had, which we don't have time to go through all of those. I have a lot of problems. So
That's amazing.
Yeah. So all of the other issues that I were having all went away because I realized if I just do what I know I need to do instead of focusing on the issues, focus on the solution, it allows you to push through the problems and adapt for the situation that's in your way. So we move on to the next piece of the match, which is the day of the weigh-ins. That's the first time you get to meet your opponent. So in combat sports, you have to make weight. There's weight classes to keep it safe. So that is when you show up and actually show that you are in the correct weight class. And they usually do a ceremonial stare down for entertainment purposes. And I notice my guy is nervous. And I don't know why he's nervous. Maybe he's just afraid to stand in front of people in his underwear. I don't know. But he's nervous, which gave me this sense of confidence and showed me that everyone feels the same emotions, not just me. I'm not just nervous. He's nervous. So are the other fighters that are here. Everyone's freaking out. So every situation that you put yourself in, you're not special. Everyone else is afraid. Everyone else is scared. They're nervous. They doubt themselves. They don't belong, feel like they belong. You're not unique in any way. And if you accept that, it allows you to push through things because you're no longer alone. You don't feel like you're by yourself in this battle. From the competition standpoint, though, he was nervous and I felt fine. So moving into fight day. This is actually the time where I start getting a little nervous, and it's always at the rules meeting when the nerves hit me, but for some reason, nothing hit this time. And then my past 2 fights, all of the people that are in my corner, so my team, have all decided to leave me alone and go get food after the rules meeting and everything. So I'm sitting in, I don't like to leave the venue. It's just my process. So I'm all by myself with my thoughts. I feel fine this time. Everything that starts rekindling its way back, the audience, my family, my team, I'm just able to shut it all down because I've already stopped that roadblock early on in the fight camp. So I'm able to keep it calm. All of the things that happen when I'm going into competition that I'm used to, I know that I'm going to feel slower because even though, and this is important for you guys to understand, if you don't get nervous in certain situations, sometimes your body realizes you're getting ready to go through a stressful event. Bless you. Sometimes your body goes through or realizes it's going through a stressful event, and you start feeling it internally, but you don't feel nervous. So when a fighter is getting warmed up and ready, everything feels slower, your breathing is harder, you feel more tired, and it can really mess with you if you're not prepared for it. So I already knew that was coming. So that comes from being prepared and experienced with competing. But when it was time to compete, before I make the walk, there was absolutely no nerves. Everything was calm and relaxed. And I went out and executed my plan flawlessly. I wound up with a 2nd round stoppage. It was a great performance and arguably one of the best victories of my career. But it had nothing to do with the fact that I won. It's the fact that all of the things that I put in practice from my teachings and the things that I work with internally, I put them in practice and shut everything down. So I was no longer putting a Band-Aid over the problem. I was solving the problem. So now anytime I wind up in a stressful scenario, this is my strategy, and it kills all the nerves. I'm very calm and relaxed. But the thing with that is is to understand that from all of the positive ways of thinking and positive solutions, there's always negative ways that you can approach dealing with anxiety and nerves. And these are a little bit more relevant in Dave's world, so I'm going to let him.
Oh, great. I get to talk
well,
about the
just,
negative
just
stuff.
just to clarify.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, just to clarify. Yeah. A lot of athletes won't take any type of drugs or alcohol or anything like that because it messes with their performance. So now I'll turn it over to Dave.
Wow, okay. That was dark, but that's an amazing story. Yeah, I mean, I want to first say that, you know, doubt is a really dark space for everybody. And when I was growing up, I studied cello with a teacher she was probably the most famous female cellist of the 20th century. And you know, she seemed like a superhero. Like, it seemed like there was nothing that she couldn't do. So it was kind of surprising to me when I was about 14 and I was struggling in competition. I never got nervous for performances, but I got very nervous around competition because competition in classical music is a lot like figure skating. There's all this compulsory stuff. It's all scored. It's really hard. It's really unartistic. And if you're a creative person like me, it's difficult because the creative part really doesn't matter. It's really just all this compulsory technical stuff. And I asked her about performance anxiety, and she said, well, it never goes away. It just doesn't talk to you as much. It doesn't talk to you as well as you get older. And that's what I've experienced in my own career is that all the doubts, all the thoughts, they occur still, you know? And that's why I have a tremendous amount of compassion. Of course, like I have to fly to Los Angeles tomorrow, and I'm playing with a whole bunch of like big TikTok celebrities on Thursday. And of course, there's a part of the cassette that's running in my brain that's going like, you don't look good enough, you don't sound good enough, you're not gonna have the right cello. It's like, and learning how to talk to that a different way and give it less power is really important. I think what Len is referring to, and I see it very much in my world of classical music, is that, a lot of people try to sort of medicate that space. And there's a lot of sort of beta blocker abuse in the world that I'm in. And then, obviously, there's very tragic stories. I actually played on Amy Winehouse's last recording a few weeks, like a month before she died. And stories like that are just so sad because you see this incredibly talented person struggling with an idea of toxic specialness in a way. Like this idea that accomplishment is somehow because you're special in some bizarre way. And there's an interesting thing, like I've been lucky enough to work on some really iconic records, and I arranged a record called Channel Orange, which is an important hip hop record. So the artist is Frank Ocean, and right after I did it, it was a really big deal, and I went to Australia on tour, and everybody wanted me to talk about working on that record and like what it was like, and I wanted to give these heroic stories of, some magical world of how that record happened. But the truth is, like, that record happened in the middle of the night when, in weird ways, and nobody really knowing that it was going to turn into what it was going to be. And I found myself saying this sentence, which I thought was really interesting. They asked me, well, how do you work with celebrities? And I said, the only reason I'm good at working with celebrities is because I work with beginner artists every day also, and because I treat every artist the same. And I think that if you think about songs, like songs are so personal. Like there's two people in this room whose songs I really love, you and you. And I don't think, I worked with a huge celebrity yesterday, but I kind of like your songs better than that person's songs. So it's not a big deal. But the fact is you want to honor the space of that person because in a way that vulnerability never goes away. I mean, like they're telling their stories, you're telling your stories, I'm trying to tell my stories. And of course, when you're trying to tell your stories, you are scared. It is scary. It's scary to get in front of like 1,000 people and talk about your own heartbreak. And before I turn it back to Len to talk a little bit about something that he does motivationally that I think has helped me a lot, I do want to just sort of talk about a mentor of mine a little bit. I've toured for many years with the rock band Evanescence, and Amy Lee in a lot of ways is a real personal hero of mine. And I think one of the reasons she is not just because she's a great musician, but she's also, I've lived on a tour bus for years with her and her kid and husband, and she's a great mom. And, there's something so powerful when you go around the world and you see someone take a song like My Immortal that she wrote that's about her own very personal pain. And help lives everywhere. That's courage. And that's a gladiator.
Yeah, so up to this point, we're coming to the head of the conversation, and we'll have time for questions afterwards. If you want to hang out, you're more than welcome to. But we've talked about what courage is. We've heard some interesting stories about opportunities that courage give us. We've looked at solutions for overcoming our own mental roadblocks. But here's the fact of the matter. Sometimes you're going to be put in a situation to where you don't have an option but to push through. The strategies will come later. So right now you can work on taking a personal self-assessment and figuring out the things that throw you off in stressful situations. But today, tomorrow, a month, a year from now, you're going to wind up in a situation where you'll have no choice but to push through. And all of my competitors, not only just the people that are looking to compete, but the people that are looking to just strengthen themselves and find their full potential inside and outside the gym, I have this same talk with about something that I truly believe when it comes to the world of combat sports. They're all modern-day gladiators. So fighters step into an arena, they put their body and life on the line for the entertainment of others. But back in the day, when two gladiators stepped into the arena, there was no second place medal. You live or you die. There is no second chance. So whatever fear and anxiety you had stepping into that arena didn't matter. You have to push through. The only way out is through sometimes. And I believe that with every fiber of my being. So when you wind up in a tough situation, I want you to think about this. Two fighters step into a ring, it's do or die. There's no second chance. You have to win. Winning is the only option. Your excuses are irrelevant. So no matter what, you push through and you find it deep within yourself to figure out how to win, because losing is not an option. Fighters are modern-day gladiators, and I truly believe that life is nothing but one big fight, and there's moments when you're going to be put into adversity, and you're going to have no choice but to see it through or be willing to accept the consequences afterwards. And unfortunately, you won't always win. Sometimes it's going to hit hard. But you want to be able to look back and think that I gave everything that I had in this moment, in that time. Maybe I can improve, maybe I lost an opportunity, but there's always a way forward. But when you have to figure out that way to move forward, did you give it everything that you had in the moment? Thank you so much for listening to us talk. Yeah.
All right, does anyone have any questions? We have some time for audience questions if anyone would like to ask anything. One moment. I'm going to give you the microphone. We're streaming online, so they have trouble hearing if you don't speak into the microphone.
Okay. Mr. Eggar, do you have many other family members that are involved with music?
Yeah, I have a really complicated family history, but my biological mom's family was musicians, yeah. But most of the family I grew up with was actually writers, like literature professors. So for me, music's storytelling for that reason. I'm much more attached to narrative in music. It's probably why I work in the songwriter genre a lot. So that most of my family was actually in writing, and I sort of became very well read. And when I'm producing records, I think a tremendous amount about poetry and sort of like visuals and narrative. And I always get in trouble in classical music rehearsals because I'm always trying to get the people like, can we just get it right? And I'm like, no, but don't you see this is where this happens in the battle, and then this happens over here. They're like, what are you talking about? It's just my way, but yeah. So a little bit of some music, but more literature, actually, weirdly. So.
Anyone else? All right, we'll do David first.
One of the things that you introduced at the beginning was rhythm. And, it's evident in music. Is there some secret to rhythm in?
I'm going to say one thing, and then I'm going to give you the mic, because he's going to be all humble, and it's going to be really annoying. So the whole entire reason that I study fighting with him is because his rhythm is insane. He has really, really, really good timing and rhythm, and it's mostly because he listens to a lot of things like Slipknot all day.
He's right. I'm a huge metalhead. I listen to a lot of music, but metal, and Pantera, and I like a lot of, anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so yeah, so there is a secret to rhythm and fight. Everybody's got their own rhythm. So rhythm can be built up off of strikes, so punches, kicks, knees. It can be built off of body movement, and there's elements of timing. So the time it takes from a strike to leave your face to your opponent and then back, and then vice versa, the time it takes for their strike to leave them to you and back. So in music, you need kind of a chemistry with the rhythm and timing. Everything has to work together. In fighting, you want to disrupt rhythm. You never want to allow your opponent to pick their rhythm up and get a flow. And I think I'm not a drummer, so I don't know. It's okay. Look, whatever. Go away. But there is kind of a sequence and a pattern. There's common combinations and drills that a lot of gyms throughout the world will have this same kind of flow with. But then you start learning to manipulate those rhythms. So like a 1-2-3 combination, which is straight hook. It's hard to do holding a microphone. Sorry. So you go like, pop. So a jab cross hook, you can manipulate the rhythm, and that I'll tell you guys. You guys might not be able to hear if you hold it. So changing the rhythm, you can go 1, 2, 3 in a smooth cadence. You go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can change the tempo. So pop, pop. So you're mixing up the cadence. Then you can start adding steps. There's a lot of different ways to manipulate rhythm with movement. And what was really interesting about the development of our program was we were actually originally in the same building as the Bristol Ballet. So I developed a really good relationship with the teachers at the ballet. And we started talking a lot about their training and seeing how they work together and prepare for shows and all of that stuff. And I thought it was really interesting, the work that they put into it. And after talking to Dave, I actually saw a lot more similarities in fighting and music than I did fighting and dance, even though they're both movement-based. So it was really cool. So the short answer to your question is, yes, there is a sequence to the rhythm, but there's not something that you want your opponent to figure out. Because if I can find your rhythm and your timing, I can win the match.
It's also really interesting because, you know, one of the things that I've taken from martial arts is there's a really, and I work with dance a lot, like I play music for dance a lot, is there's a really strong difference between like intellectual rhythm and kinesthetic rhythm. So if I imagine a groove, that's different from like feeling the groove in my body. So it's like, for example, when you work with dance, especially in genres like flamenco or Caribbean dance or something, intellectualizing the rhythm doesn't actually show you how the rhythm works on the human body. And there's all these, especially when you look at things like West African rhythm, there's all these sort of rhythms that don't make a lot of sense on an intellectual level that make a lot of sense with sort of how the body moves. And so I think also, you know, that Miles Davis, the jazz musician, was a boxer and talked a lot about like boxing, timing, and jazz, which is sort of interesting. So I think the idea of sort of how you use your body rhythmically and how that translates into the ability to play music is sort of a fascinating area for sure. Any other questions?
I think KT had one.
Oh no, KT's gonna ask a question. I'm gonna be like so scared. It's gonna be deep.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to make it as to the point as possible. I'm interested in this idea, at least in performance space, of tapping into the state of play. You know, that like this childhoodness. Whenever I've been in musical situations, and I've had very, very, very limited combat sports experience.
We could change that.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, now's the time. So,
or you and I can just fight. But anyways, there we go.
I found that whenever I'm in those situations that I enjoy myself, I'm more present. I've seen this in the students that I teach too. If I can get them to this kind of give and take playful spirit, that there's more that comes out of it. So my question is in preparation, when you're training for an event or a performance, how much of your preparation is centered around strict repetition of something or trying to tap into a good mental space?
I got you. You know, like it's interesting because I was just in Europe doing a pretty complicated classical music gig for a couple of weeks, and me and my friend who's a second violinist of Dior String Quartet had an interesting conversation about practice routines and this exact thing. Because a lot of my practice routine is I practice classical concertos. I don't actually practice the music that I'm performing, and the reason for that is because usually, like if I'm like, let's say that week I was playing a whole bunch of different mixed chamber music pieces, like, you know, whatever, like things for like clarinet, cello, and piano, stuff like that. Very difficult, but none of which was as difficult as like a solo classical concerto piece. What happens, I find, is that when I do repetition on what I'm actually going to play, it actually creates a lot of stiffness. It's almost like practicing drills and then trying to do those drills when you're sparring, and then the other person doesn't do what you expect, and so you've kind of built your body just to do that thing. So what I've kind of done in my own training routine is to train all my fundamentals a lot as a player, like at a really high level, but then leave a lot of fluidity in the music that I'm actually playing. And as an example of how that really paid off, one of the performances we did, I mean, I kind of don't want to throw anybody under the bus like on a live stream, but I will. The pianist was like severely lacking, okay? And it was a very difficult piece that pretty much the clarinet player and I carried for 15 minutes, something where the pianist was wrong most of the time. Now, the thing is, if I had rigidly prepared my part, that wouldn't have been possible. What I did instead was kind of scan the piece and kind of go, all right, I'm going to simulate a lot of things in this to keep us together. You know, I'm going to kind of simulate the idea the composer had. And I'm going to sort of utilize, I trained a lot that day. Like I had my fast technique in really good shape because I was like, man, I got to kind of be prepared for anything that can happen tonight. Because it doesn't matter, but it was a piece with a lot of very difficult patterning, and the ability to sort of get tongue-tied in your fingers was very easy. So I guess what I would say to you is like, in a lot of ways, it's just about having your skill set really high so that then fluidity is sort of part of your technical space, if that makes sense, and not building in rigidity. But I'm also going to ask Len what he thinks. Yeah, he's an incredibly good songwriter.
I can't write anything, so that's awesome. Yeah, he said you're a really good songwriter. In case you couldn't hear him, yeah. So yeah, no, I talk to my fighters about this all the time. It's to have fun. When you go into any type of high pressure situation, when you make it too serious, it puts too much pressure on yourself. So there is this element of repetition and practice. Like circling back to the match I told you guys about, the number one thing that I focused on with this match, I had a 45-second clip to watch, and what I noticed was the guy was a boxer, and boxers tend to lean heavy on their jab, so they put a lot of weight on their front leg, which leans right into one of my favorite techniques, which is a low kick, which is attacking the thigh. And if you've ever had a Charlie horse before, or run your leg into something, or those of you guys, like we're all Southern here, you've all got that one cousin who's like, it hurts. So imagine that amplified. That's my favorite thing to go to. And I just repped it and repped it and repped it and repped it and made sure every attack that I had was setting up that low kick. And that's ultimately how I finished the fight. I kicked him so many times that he couldn't answer the bell answer the count when the ref told him to get up. Yeah, they had to help him out. But it was okay. I don't want to. It was cool. It's fighting. Whatever. Anyway, moving on. So the problem that I was talking about within my preparation for that was the game plan that I had set in play. What I needed to have happen in my mind actually hurt me because I was so stuck and being rigid with it. So I think it's really important to have fun with a solid structure, but the ability to adapt. Because I've had in real life scenarios like competition, the inability to adapt cost me the match. So I think your preparation, and like he said, I agree 100% with the fundamentals. I tell my people all the time, the fundamentals are key. The fancy stuff is cool, but the fundamentals are going to get you out of trouble. So focus your time on the fundamentals and build off of that. So have your solid structure, but then be able to kind of move and adapt with it in the moment. So I would say definitely play and have fun. It makes training and preparation so much more enjoyable than adding all that extra stress. But know that you've got skill sets behind you when the moment comes that use to get you out of trouble.
I want to add something to that, which is it's also, one thing I've really learned from you that's been very powerful is like really honest, unemotional self-assessment. Like I'll just do it right now. You're a better writer than I am. I'm a way better player than you are. Now, I know you really well, that's why I can say this. Now, going into you and me working together, not owning those spaces is stupid. Like me pretending I'm a better writer than you is not going to get the best results out of you and me collaborating. You trying to like out solo me is also not going to work. So you can try. But my point is, it's not an ego space. It's kind of knowing. There's a humility that comes, like false modesty is false too. Like, here's a perfect example. I have to constantly assess myself as a cellist because 90% of the reason I got hired was because I'm like mad creative and cool. The main reason I get hired is because I can play fast and I'm accurate. And then it's nice that I also have personality, but that's most of why I get hired. I mean, I'm just being honest. That's the truth. Like, I get all the like hard gigs that Yo-Yo Ma doesn't want to do because he doesn't want to learn it. So it's like, here's a super hard modern piece. And it's difficult, and I want to pretend that it's about my soul and my like emotion. But that's not really why it's happening. They're like, oh, good, you got your accuracy was 99.8%, and it was also fun that you were theatrical. How cool, But like, so the point is, it's like I used to have a lot of insecurity because I was like, oh, it's not okay for me to think I could play faster than Yo-Yo Ma or something like that. And then finally I was like, I can only understand the places I need to grow if I can also own the places that I'm good. Like you not owning the fact that you're a great you're probably one of the best lyricists in this whole area. So like you not owning that is self-destructive. Sorry if I made you uncomfortable. You can beat me up later. No, but it doesn't mean, wait, sorry. Yeah.
You had no idea you were about to embark in a therapy session, did you?
No, you are. No, you are. But I mean, the thing is, it doesn't mean you have to be arrogant, but it's also, in terms of your point about play, you're going to have more fun. Like, Brittany hits really hard. So if I spar with her, I'm going to be evasive. It's stupid for me to pressure because I'm better at being evasive. You know what I mean? So you'll have more fun if you actually know how to lean into your strengths is the point of what I'm getting at, if that makes sense. Though I did it in a very circuitous way, and I'm sorry. Any other questions?
I think you have.
Yes. Oh,
Sorry, she's got one, and then I'll come back.
oh, Paige has one. Hey, Paige.
Hey, so this might be like a completely different, and a whole nother discussion, but some of the biggest victories in my life have happened when I was on the losing end of a situation.
Ooh, yes.
And vice versa. Sometimes I have really excelled, but I felt like I failed. So how do you guys approach failure in general? Or, maybe winning, but it feels empty?
Wow, yeah, that's a beautiful question on every level. I'm going to answer it and then give it to Len. You want it first?
Yeah. So you don't have to answer this question unless you want to. Why did winning feel empty?
Because it felt like I didn't earn it, or that I got the win through not by because it felt like I didn't earn it enough, or because it felt like maybe I didn't not like cheating or anything, but maybe I didn't use the correct methods to win.
So if you don't mind, what did you win? If you don't have to answer that, you don't. You just say like, pass. We'll just move on.
Well, it was for my nursing degree. I felt like I really excelled at this simulation lab, but it just didn't. It just kind of more felt like I knew it. I knew the answers because I had experience in the hospital already.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, so think about all of the time that you spent in the hospital. Hours and hours, late nights, early mornings, overtime, times that you clocked out and then something happened and you had to work, so free work that you did. That's something that you earned. That wasn't given. You earned that. So the fact that you went into your nursing degree and whatever that simulation was, you rocked it, wasn't because that you necessarily had an advantage. You just had extra work put in. That you didn't acknowledge. That's the problem. So this kind of falls into this imposter syndrome concept that we talked about. If you won something, you won it. If you didn't cheat and you did it morally sound, it doesn't matter if you're smarter, doesn't matter if you're better than the other people, you won, and you can have that. It might not have been as challenging as it would have been had you not had that experience, but that experience is why you won. So you shouldn't feel like you didn't earn that at all, because you did. You totally earned that, and you should be happy that you won. And the problem is people, and this is something that you know, I struggle with the whole imposter syndrome thing. You know, the match that I keep circling back to, when it was done, the first place my head went was, he wasn't like a top tier guy. I shouldn't have been in the ring with this dude. You know, no, this is a guy that's solid. The match that I told you about was against a game opponent, and he was winning the rounds, or the time that I saw, rather. He was winning the round until one moment shifted the tide for the other guy. So he's a game opponent. My game was just better that night. We fight again, it might not go that way. But that night, I did what I had to do, and I won. And I have to acknowledge that. I can't be like, well, maybe I should, maybe this. It doesn't matter. In the moment, you won. Own that, build off it, and go on. Because next time, you might not win. And that's where your lessons come from. Because, again, that match that I told you that I lost because of lack of adaptation was the best learning moment for me throughout my entire career as a competitor, because it was my worst performance throughout my entire career. And that adaptation piece is the thing that stuck with me ever since then. So you can learn through moments of adversity, but own your moments of victory. Because, again, as long as everything's morally sound and you won fair and square, you won. So own that.
I think it's been really important in my life to create personal goals. If you try to live a music career based on wins and losses, you're going to be bipolar all the time. I mean, the most money I ever made off a song, I made, you know, into 6 digits off this song, is a song that I don't think is very good work on my part, that was made in 2 hours. It just ended up sort of hitting the lottery. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful because it made 5 years of my life much easier financially. It's certainly not a song I ever put in my catalog in terms of showing how I am as an arranger producer. Like, it's not something I'm proud of that way. I'm very proud that it happened, and I think it's always interesting. So we have all these different ways. Most of my income is royalties, and like, so you get these royalty reports, and it's hilarious because there's like hundreds of songs, but only like 6 of them make money. So it'll be like nothing makes. It's like so insane. It'll be like 40 cents, 0.00067 cents, and it'll be like $14,000.37, and then it'll be like nothing, $20,000, nothing, because unless something's a hit, it actually doesn't really generate money. So there's songs I've worked on, like Say Something, that have been, you know, very valuable financially. That's actually a great song also, but it's not something I'm as, you know, in terms of a level of like, you know, string complexity. Something like Philip Phillips' Thicket is a way more interesting arrangement, but that's not, you know. So if you try to make it about those things, I think wins are a way that you sort of know you're on the right path. Like for me, it's kind of a little check in a box that goes, I can breathe a little deeper knowing I'm not messing up and going the wrong direction. But I have to say, and I think Lem will agree with me, that in general, losses have taught me more than wins. Like really trying to understand, you know, getting a track back that I thought I did an amazing job on and having all my instruments cut from it, and then really trying to understand why. Just like, what did I do? What did I not see here? So I feel like in a very karate kind of martial arts way, there's like, there's this thing in karate called the dojo kun, and one of the principles therein is sort of like seek perfection of character, and sort of there's this idea that you start as a white belt and then you end as a white belt because your black belt gets so afraid that the white comes through and that you're always a beginner. And so I just try to see, I'm going to say the song because most of the work I do is on songs. I try to see the song that's right in front of me and kind of clear out the rest of my mind and just try to make that song as unbelievably special. And then it's like a child that goes out in the world and you don't know. Sometimes it's the one you'd least, I mean, hold on one sec, just hold this. So this happens at the beginning of Frank Ocean Channel Orange. Okay, that was me warming up. Now like a bazillion people have sampled that because they left it on the track and it starts that record, and that record won 6 Grammys, and they just left it on by accident. It's not very impressive. You can play it, you can play music. That might be one of the most important things I've ever done. That's weird. Any other questions?
I think this gentleman had one, and I've got one from an online viewer as well.
Oh no.
Yeah, you both have obviously had such great accomplishments and awards and illustrious careers and all that. What are the top things that are left on your bucket list to accomplish and do?
I'll let you start that.
I think the problem is when you get into something that's considered competitive, like music's competitive, fighting's competitive, it's like it's never done. It's never enough. I could say that if I retired, which I mean, fighting has a shelf life on it. Most people are bowing out about 40. 35 to 40 is the time people end it. I'm going to be 36 this year, so if I wanted to compete, I'd have to do it pretty soon. Fighting on bigger shows, getting bigger titles, like those are always things. But I think now my goal is to develop students to the highest level possible. I think that's kind of where I'm at. We do some work with USA Kickboxing. That's where we're kind of moving our program. And I'd really like to help somebody at the very least make the Olympic qualifications as a coach. I think that'd be a really cool achievement. And then on the entertainment side, taking somebody to a really big show to help them fulfill their dreams, that would be really cool. But the thing that's really interesting to me now, like I've started training people over the years in both, leisurely competition and training, and then also the people that are a little bit more serious, and the fighters are kind of like passion projects for me. I think that the biggest goal that I have is to offer something for the general public, which is what I focus on building our gym to be, is a sanctuary for people to come in and escape, and just make sure that that is something that's well known in our area, that people can do that and they can come and better themselves. So having that as a staple in our community for the people that are interested in this, I think is ultimately the end goal. Just having a place where people can come and escape the chaos of the world. And then if they choose, help me fulfill the other goals I talked about.
That was really good. I don't know. It's weird. It's like I've already, I've gotten to work with so many of my heroes, and as a cellist, that seems crazy. Like when I think about like 12-year-old me practicing like, da-na-na-na-na-na-na, and thinking like maybe, I don't know what I was thinking, I'd be in an orchestra or something. It's like, it's so weird to have had already the career that I've had. With, coming out of the pandemic, I think for all of us as musicians, this last year has been very intense, just because it's like live music's just come back like a blood transfusion. And so it's been complicated to kind of balance like all the recording work with being, back out there in the world performing. There's of course artists I want to work with that I haven't, that would be just awesome. I think though, for me, fundamentally in music, what's really beautiful is how you touch other people with songs. And so I just love to be a part of songs that really affect change. And that's something I just want to always be part of. Like, that's just a beautiful thing, to be part of the writing, creating process of something that then goes out in the world and does positive work in the world. It's I can't tell you how, like, I'm thinking of like toured with Philip Phillips for many years, American Idol winner, and just every time we do Home, it's just so beautiful to see how that song became a part of so many people's lives, and just honor those people with that song. Like, that's, people's had it at their weddings, and just all these, you're just playing for that audience and thinking, wow, it's, it's, I remember like the last Evanescence tour, a lot of times when Amy would do My Immortal, she'd be like, this is your song, audience, it's not my song. I think that's a beautiful thing that happens to a song when it goes out in the world, and I just love being part of that. The little part of that magic is just really special. So, yeah.
Well, I do have a question from our head curator, Renee Rogers, who was not able to be here in person today. Some unexpected things pulled her away, but she's watching online.
Oh, gosh.
And she wanted to know if you can
Hi.
tell us an interesting story about the impact this program has had on another performer.
Sure, absolutely. I think that, one of the things I've learned from you that's been incredibly helpful to me, because I'm super ADD and ADHD or whatever it's called and everything, is, it's for myself and also for students, how to create like really organized game plans for them to meet their goals. And I feel like, to Renee's question, I would just say a couple of my graduate students at NJCU, it's been very powerful for me to kind of help them through making their first record or putting together their graduation recital, and having like a very systematic way to help them, because it's an interesting thing. It's all private students and it's all on Zoom, so there's something about Zoom that makes Zoom easier to be very personal and kind of vulnerable with students. And I think to be able to look at all the different steps that you go through of sort of like assessing your strengths and weaknesses, looking at your weaknesses, making a plan to overcome it, trying to understand, how to actually be in this kind of competitive music world. So I feel for me, how it's helped me a lot with my students is to just be able to really have a holding space for them for something that I know for me, and definitely I realize for them because they come back to me with this, that we don't have a lot of that in music. We're just kind of thrown these challenges with no way to really, overcome them except just somehow we're supposed to know how to do it. It's like, oh, you're supposed to know how to make your first record. Like, what? like how? Like, there's no instruction manual and everybody's competing with you. It's just like, what is going on? So for me, I feel like that's been a very powerful part of our program, is an area that I felt kind of helpless as a coach, where I was like, okay, I don't really know how to help these people except to sort of give them experiences from my life, to actually be like, no, we're actually going to sit down and make a 6-week plan for how you're going to like work out your stuff. That's been very, very valuable. I've seen a lot of results that way.
So Dave typically gets the follow-up with a lot of the people we work with, because like we're moving into the business sector, so we're going to be working with people that are more professionally driven outside of the performing arts. But a lot of the people that he's worked with before I get there, I hear the information that he just give you post our sessions. But what I do see, because a lot of the core principles that we've talked about in our program and some of the ones we talked about today, I actually teach, and I was teaching before we even put our program together. And it's the confidence piece that I really like and see how that helps people. And it's that finding that within you to kind of go and do something that you normally wouldn't do. So seeing the little kid who comes in who's unsure of themselves and doesn't really know that they want to be here, but mom and dad's kind of like, no, you're going to do this. And then they start carrying themselves a little higher. And that same scenario, you can take that to an adult who walked in and just something, I don't know what that thing is, but there's just some kind of heavy weight on their shoulders that disappears when they walk out the door. I mean, that right there is a thing that helps me. So whether that be from the training or maybe a conversation we had or putting some of this stuff in play, like seeing someone being able to better their lives, whether it be as a musician or just an individual, that right there is like probably the biggest thing that I've seen.
Do we have any other questions? We probably have time for one more, maybe.
Short and sweet. Where can we see you all perform next?
We were talking about doing a full program for Composing a Champion in Bristol. We haven't done that yet. We've gone all over the country, but we've been talking very seriously about putting something together and doing it here. We'll have to get back to you on dates. But yeah, we were with the website, my website. So you can go to my website, which is championstriking.com. I've got an events page there that we'll post stuff on. And other than that, like we're looking at building a lot of really cool things with the program and hopefully bring something here. And then as far as me doing the ninja jumpy stuff, I don't know. It's just whatever.
It might happen at Rhythm and Roots again this year. Oh, so, yeah. Might have to do a comeback. That'd be cool. I'll see. Maybe do it to one of his songs. Might be rad. Thank you so much for listening to us today. You can come talk to us in person if you want. We're very honored to be here. This is a lot of fun. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you both for coming out.
Country music museum. We always play some country.
Thank you, Dave and Lynn, for coming and talking to us tonight. I know I certainly got a lot out of that. It was really interesting. Just a few moments, if I can have your attention for just a little bit longer, I'd like to talk about some of our upcoming events here at the Birthplace of Country Music Museum. Our next speaker session will be on Tuesday, June 11th, and we are talking with musician Andrew Finn McGill about the relationships between Irish, Scottish, and American fiddle styles, an immigration story. This is going to be in person and also available on YouTube as well, same as the program tonight. Then we also have, if you've not seen it yet, our current special exhibit is called A Cardboard History of Blue Ridge Music. It's open now through July 21st, so be sure to check that out. We also have on June 1st is our In the Pines concert with Dwight Yoakam, Elle King, Wyatt Flores, and Paul Cothran. So if you don't have tickets to that yet, be sure to get those. It's going to be a really great day, and that event is a fundraiser for our organization as well. So if you buy a ticket, you're also supporting the museum. Then we also have on June 7th is Story Time. This is our program for toddlers. We're reading She Sang for the Mountains, which is all about Jean Ritchie, and then Mama Molasses, another local performer, will play a song related to the book, and then we do a little craft together also related to the book on the first Friday of every month at 10:30. And then on June 8th, our Jam kids are having their very first concert. Jam is short for Junior Appalachian Musicians. It's a regional organization that helps put instruments and lessons in the hands of kids. It's a wonderful program. We had wanted to be a part of this for a long time. We finally made it happen last October. So the museum is now an affiliate location for jam lessons, and kids can take lessons here at the museum every Saturday morning at 10:30. It's $5 a lesson, and you pay as you go. We also have instruments available that they can borrow until they get their own. So if you don't have an instrument, that does not stop you from taking lessons here at the museum. But they're having their very first concert to show off what they've been learning, and that'll be on June 8th at their normal lesson time. Instead of a lesson, they'll be in this theater doing a show. It's free and open to the public, so come check that out and support them. And thank you again for coming tonight.